Okay, and we are now recording. Okay, well, welcome again, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. I want to also welcome the various individuals, right, from the folks from Carlsbad and the surrounding area, and folks from Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and everywhere in between. I want to give a special thanks to Mr. Kyle Marksteiner and Mr. Don Hancock. I appreciate you guys. We reached out to you guys directly to help spread the word on this stakeholder meeting. So I really appreciate your guys' help. And there's 34 participants. So thank you guys. I just wanted to say thank you and welcome to everybody else. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through our PowerPoint presentation. Let me know when you are able to see the screen.
Yeah, Ricardo.
Thumbs up. Yes. I'm sorry, Megan?
We can see it. It looks good.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I had this other laptop to, but it's even slower on my end. So anyway, Megan, I'll kind of look to you and David if there's any issues. Okay, now it loaded. Okay. So slide one, this is a stakeholder virtual meeting hosted by the Environment Department Hazardous Waste Bureau. The topic for tonight's meeting is the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant 10-year permit renewal and the process with the renewal. You met Rick Sheen, our Hazardous Waste Bureau Chief. I am the WIPP Group Staff Manager, and you met David and Megan. This meeting is scheduled from 5:30 to 7:30. We may take the entire time, we may not, but we have that opportunity, okay, till at least 7:30. So next slide. Again, there's a delay on my screen, so I'm going to go kind of slowly and make sure that everybody can follow along. We did go through introductions. In this presentation, I'm going to go over a brief overview of the renewal milestones so far. I'm going to discuss a brief explanation of the recently submitted and updated red line strikeout portion of the application. A brief overview of the renewal schedule that goes into next year, into 2023. And then at the end, we will open up and have a forum to gather comments and concerns, questions from you guys participating in this meeting. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. Renewal milestones. So there was, the permittees did host pre-application public meetings that were held in Santa Fe and in Carlsbad in January 2020. The renewal application was submitted on March 31st, 2020. NMED reviewed that application and we determined administrative completeness on October 6th, 2020. The technical review of the application has been ongoing since then. The class 3, there was a class 3 for panels 11 and 12 that was submitted by the permittees on July 30th of 2021. And that class 3 did have its 60-day public comment period, and NMED did receive public comments. As part of that review, NMED did request the consolidation of that class 3 permit modification with the renewal application on December 17th, 2021. In our letter from December 17th, we stated the various reasons for that, and mostly was for resources and to work on these two items at the same time. to have one hearing. The permittee submitted an updated red line strikeout application on March 17th of this year. Okay. A reminder that the current permit does remain in effect until NMED processes the renewal application and issues a new permit. Moving on to the next slide. And at the end, there'll be opportunity for any clarifications on the information on the presentation, and as well as feedback. So slide 4. The updated red line strikeout includes the modification requested in the Class 3 for panels 11 and 12. The changes are documented in an explanatory matrix that was submitted by the permittees as part of that March 17th submittal. The red line strikeout is based on the current permit as of March 2022. Only the red line strikeout portion of the permit renewal application was updated. No other changes were made to the original March 2020 application. So this part's important. The permittees, they are planning a meeting to explain that matrix, to explain their changes, to explain their submittal. Next Thursday, the 28th at 5 p.m. So the permittees have gone through that matrix, and they explained it to us, and we thought we highly encouraged them that they consider hosting a stakeholder meeting as well to go over that matrix, because there's a lot involved, right? It's a big application, and the updates are a lot of information as well. So the permittees have agreed to host a meeting next week on the 28th, 5 p.m., and they will go through what they submitted in a matrix format. So they'll go and explain how to review that matrix, okay? So we are not prepared to do that in this meeting, but just so you guys know, next week's meeting, the permittees will do that, okay? Moving on to the next slide. A tentative upcoming renewal schedule. So there is the next step in the renewal process is for us to complete our technical review of the application. And as part of that, NMED issues what we call a technical incompleteness determination. So TID for short, technical incompleteness determination. And we expect that to be issued to the permittees in May, likely the first half of May. Okay, so likely the first half of May. The permittees will be allowed some time to respond to this TID, and we haven't finalized the time frame, but we're thinking 60 to 90 days. So we'll allow 60 to 90 days for the permittees to respond to the TID. Once the permittees respond to our TID, NMED will review, and we will commence preparing a draft permit. Okay, the draft permit is expected to be issued for public comment, 60-day comment period this summer. Okay. After the comment period, NMED reviews public comments and any requests for hearing. After this happens, NMED will reach out to public commenters requesting a hearing, and we will schedule negotiations where we come together to address any issues. After these negotiations, there will be a public hearing notice issued. Okay. The NMAC, the state regs, they allow minimum of 30-day hearing notice, but we'll keep in contact with folks and see what an appropriate hearing notice timeframe would be. After the hearing notice is issued, there will be a public hearing. And there will be a public hearing, and it remains to be seen under what format this public hearing will take place. After the public hearing, there are post-hearing activities, and there are various post-hearing activities, which include, filing of the transcripts, findings of facts, conclusions of law. The hearing officer will issue his report. There will be a comment period on the hearing officer's report. And then ultimately that hearing officer's report will go to the secretary of the New Mexico Environment Department or his designee, but likely the secretary. There's also an option for oral arguments in front of the secretary. So there's a lot involved in the post-hearing activities. After all that's concluded, there will be a final decision by the secretary. And after this final decision by the secretary, there is a 30-day effective date of the permit. So even on whatever day the secretary makes his decision, just so all aware, there is a time period of 30 days before any permit is effective. Okay. Moving on to, I guess it is here. By this schedule, we are anticipating to have a hearing by the end of this calendar year. By the end of this calendar year, and an anticipated final decision by early summer of 23. Now, all this is dependent on one important thing that the permittees have been communicating with the department, the New Mexico Environment Department, and that is the permittees are looking into a potential submittal of a Class 2 permit modification request for the shielded container. The Hazardous Waste Bureau, our group, we've communicated to the permittees that it is our preference that this Class 2 be submitted after the renewal process, so in the summer of 2023. And I know the permittees have considered that, but at the current moment, it does appear that their preference is to submit in the late May, late next month. And so, I think we've been in communication, and I've expressed my concerns with that, especially with the delay of our schedules. And so I've communicated that up my chain, and I know the permittees have communicated up their chain. So it remains to be seen, but if the permittees do go forward and submit the Class 2 for shielded containers next month, by the end of next month, it will impact this schedule. I will push it to the right? Because as you guys know, Class 2s have strict timelines under the regulations, and we would have to drop a lot of things to focus on that Class 2. We are aware also of the fact that next January is the start of a 60-day legislative session, so we have all that in mind. And so it remains to be seen, and we'll keep in communication as to what what this schedule will look like, and whether the permittees submit that class 2 or not. And we can talk about that after. I'll move on to the next slide. So NMED is interested in your feedback and or questions, okay? And we have some items listed below. And the first one, as you can see, is bulk comments. So Megan's gonna take some time just to speak a little bit about that, about some suggestions or some ideas or thoughts. And then I'll get back to the other items on this slide. Okay, so Megan, if you would.
Hello. So I'm mainly talking to probably Kyle and Joni specifically, because you all are the main people that drive the postcards, and Don too, I guess. But I'm hoping that there'll be a way that we can think of to do bulk comments that is just easier for you all and easier for me, that we can still check these people's names off, but you don't have to send in and use the resources to send in all these postcards. And what's hard for me is I always worry that I'm going to miss someone's name, and I don't want to do that. So some kind of digital format where people could sign names to one letter or something like that. So I'm just putting the bug in your ear right now, and maybe we can talk at a later date and think of something that might be good all around.
Thank you, Megan. I think I'll add too, right? There's a lot involved with the postcards where we have to scan them individually. There's just a lot involved, and when we think there might be some ideas to still get the point across, to still get the amount of commenters across, but just in a better fashion. So stay tuned. Okay. Thank you, Megan. So that was the bulk comments topic item. And then another renewal topics. And so I've listed them, such as specific technical topics, negotiations, the schedule, the process, public participation, or any other permit renewal items. Okay, so I think maybe before we go there, I think it'd be good to open it up for any questions or clarifications, before we get into the feedback, right? And I guess that's part of it. That's part of my slide. So if you guys would raise your hand, and Megan's going to help me out with this. If you guys have anything you would like to contribute, please do so. Please raise your hand, or you can also put a chat in the chat box, right? So there is a chat box. And then Megan will let me know, or maybe Megan can read them to me, but by all means. So anyway, I think we're ready. Let me see. I see Don, Mr. Hancock's hand come up. So go ahead, Don. I think you guys can unmute yourself. If you're having trouble, just let me know.
Looks like I'm unmuted. Thank you. Couple of things just initially. As the department knows, my organization has been very concerned for more than 3 years about the slow process of the renewal. So we would like to try to encourage the process to move along as quickly and reasonably as possible, not short-circuiting the public participation and not short-circuiting the Environment Department being able to do technical review. But a couple of things. So I hope we will have the hearing in this calendar year. That would be good from my standpoint. A couple of things to just say. I think I think 30 days should be plenty of time for the permittees to respond to the TID. They have lots of resources, more than the rest of us. They've been working on the renewal application for a long time. They put the application in, as you mentioned, 2 years ago. So they should be able to respond to your technical incompleteness determination within 30 days. The idea that they would take as long or need as long as the public gets to comment on the draft permit is frankly totally inappropriate from my standpoint. I mean, I'll lay that out. I noticed there are numerous people from the permittees that are observing the call. I can tell them that directly if I need to, but I presume I've delivered the message in that regard. I think a couple of things I would also remind people of. In the 2010 renewal process, negotiations started actually during the public comment period, again, as a way to kind of keep the momentum going, et cetera. So that certainly is a possibility. And the schedule for when the hearing is going to begin, not knowing exactly how long it's going to take, but scheduling when the hearing is going to start can be done far in advance of the 30 days. So people have that on their schedule. So I think those are the main things. Obviously, I guess the other thing I'll say, I totally agree with the Hazardous Waste Bureau's position that the Class 2 on shielded containers is totally inappropriate at this point, and would suggest very strongly that if it's submitted, that it be denied, so that the department can focus its attentions on what is very important for the public, should be very important for the permittees, as well as the Environment Department. I may have more to say, but there are lots of other people on the call, so I'll let them speak as well.
Thank you, Don. Megan, I mean, unless you have
I was just
anything.
gonna say, you know, Don, we had 30 days on the TID, but our TID is really robust, and the more we've developed it, we've thought, gosh, are we giving them enough time to answer these things that we want to know? So that's the only reason. And we anticipate them, you know, they want the renewal schedule to be moved forward. So we anticipate them submitting it early, even if we were to give them longer. That was our thinking.
Well,
But note
Megan,
taken, note taken.
Megan, they obviously have the resources to respond to the TID, and if that takes away from submitting the Class 2, that is fine. If they've got the resources to submit a Class 2 that is not necessary at this point, they certainly can put the resources into a faster response to the TID. I'm glad to hear it's going to be robust. I think that there are numerous issues that the department should be asking them about. But still, they have lots of information and lots more resources than the rest of us combined. So, and you're giving the public 60 days to comment on, you know, 1,000-page or more document. I don't think your TID is going to be 1,000 pages. So
Sure hope not.
it's certainly not appropriate for the permittees to need that kind of time.
Taken, thank you.
Any chats, Megan? I think Mr. Douglas had his hand up next. So we'll do that. And if anybody chats in the meantime, but go ahead, Mr. Douglas.
Thank you. A very easy and quick question. Can we get a copy of your slideshow emailed to us?
Good question. I think let me ask my my management, and I will let you know. I anticipated a similar question, right? And I knew the answer. The answer I had saved was that this meeting will be will be posted on the YouTube page, right? So it will be available for the public in that format, but I will ask my management if I'm able to email this presentation out. And I'll try and get a hold of you directly if I'm unable to, but just a reminder that it will be available on the YouTube page.
Thank you.
I think this is Rick Sheen. I think given that we'll be having this video online, we probably post this right next to it, you know, since it's being covered. So I think it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, and then Megan, just let me know if there's any chats. I think Ms. Deborah, I think I saw your hand go up next. You're still muted. Let me see if I can unmute you, or maybe you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Muted, yeah, sorry. You did list public participation here, so I do have some few things to say about that. We already have quite a bit of information up on the website on the application and the renewal, but it's really difficult for the general public to find. I mean, I've been doing this 40 years and I really have had a hard time finding information and being able to distinguish between the various versions of the renewal, and it seems to be in various pieces. I would hope, and I think that is being worked on, or maybe has been improved since I looked at it last, but I think that it needs to be made much more clear for the general public so that they can find the information and understand what's going on. Even more of a problem, though, is the historic difficulty that there has been to include low English proficiency, or LEP Spanish speakers, and in the process, in the permit process. And I see that there's very little information on there, on the website for Spanish speakers. In fact, the website is virtually useless if you're an LEP Spanish speaker, because almost none of the navigation is in Spanish throughout the entire website, including the Hazardous Waste Bureau page. There's probably less than 1% of the information on the website is, if that, is in Spanish, despite having a executive order that's been in place for years that says that an equal amount of information should be in Spanish as in English on the department's website. That's clearly not being done. And if you were a Spanish speaker who didn't understand English, you could not use this website or the Hazardous Waste Bureau pages. Even on the WIPP news page, there's a whole screen or more in solid English, including all the links. If for some reason you might think to scroll down, I don't know why you would if you can't read the English, but then it does tell you, if you scroll far down, that Spanish links are in orange. But even then, the word Spanish is in English. It's not Espanol, it's Spanish. I really don't understand why people who don't speak any English would necessarily even know that that's Spanish, although they might be able to understand, oh, orange means it's for me. We go back to this problem of the non-compliance with the resolution agreement that NMED signed 5 years ago, and that, the equal amount of information is not provided in Spanish as is provided in English. We have a historic problem where vital documents, or critical documents, which are also called vital documents, and critical information is not even defined, let alone translated. This has been going on for years and years, since the informal resolution agreement was created. So I'm concerned that already we have everything in English and virtually, and no ability for Spanish speakers to use the website. And then in addition, for the general public, something like 25% of New Mexicans don't have access to the internet. So how are they going to be given the same amount of information that people who do have internet access will have? And how can Spanish speakers who don't speak English be able to participate in an equal way? Or is this just going to continue as it has historically? I would really like to see a completely different process. But as I said, we already have a lot of information up on the website in English and nowhere near that same amount in Spanish. So it's not a good start. Anyway, those are my points.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Reed. And I know, just from time working here, right, that's been an ongoing concern of yours. And so this is good for, our new bureau chief to also be hearing, and we can go back and take to our senior management and our Office of General Counsel to see how we can continue to make improvements, right? Because you're right. I think since there has been some improvements in the accessibility as far as the public being able to find it online with regard to both our website and the DOE WIPP website, but sure, there's still ongoing concerns. So, and I just, one point that did come to mind is, we will have hard copies of these documents in the coming weeks and months in the libraries. So on local libraries in Santa Fe and in Carlsbad. And so there'll also be an opportunity for people to go see them hard copies and not just online, right? But I'll definitely take that back and maybe even think about how we can better communicate that they're also available at the library. So Rick, I noticed, Chief Rick, I noticed you turned on your camera. I don't know if you were going to say something or not, but it's just an ongoing concern that Ms. Reed has had. So I'll turn it over to you, Rick.
I was just going to thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm not familiar with all the rules that the at least internal policies we're supposed to be following, but thank you for bringing my attention. We're also looking at our other linguistics policies internally right now as we speak. So we'll also address this too with senior management. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I'll go to the next hand that I saw raised, Ms. Robin. You can unmute yourself.
There. Is that good? You can hear me? Great.
Yes.
So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and being open to hearing all this. And I just wanted to do a little follow-up on what Deborah was talking about, and also what Megan was talking about, and I understand the issues around bulk comments and all the scanning, but finding some way that perhaps we can work with Megan and all work together to find some way that people who do not have access to digital and virtual, information and ways to comment in that way, or just don't have the facility. I'm thinking of older people, again, people who don't speak English as we do, and also just rural areas. Having worked some in rural areas, I know that there's definitely a problem with access to anything digital and on the internet. So Megan, I understand your issue, and I hope that we can figure out a way together to make sure that the public does have access and that all forms of public participation are honored and respected. And I just want to mention just briefly, the last hearing on the shaft that I attended virtually was really difficult because, for me personally, because there was some things that we were not allowed to comment on, even though there was a great deal of evidence that that was happening, and that's specifically about WIPP expansion that was talked about quite well by the National Academy of Sciences and other DOE documents and other WIPP-related documents, and yet we were instructed by the hearing officer not to address that as part of that hearing. And I'm hoping that we can not have that happen again, and that all aspects of WIPP and what we as New Mexicans are facing in this new permit and this renewal and sort of an expansion of operations, both in size and volume and types of waste possibly permitted, all of that can be discussed in a very open and transparent manner between the agencies and the public. We really need that to happen. So I'm asking for your help and support in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, I think, yeah, I can say that, when Megan mentioned that our TID is pretty robust, right? NMED is on track to look into those types of things, the future of WIPP, right? So not only in the next 10 years, but beyond that. So I hear you, and we noted it, and thank you. Thank you for your feedback. I heard a beep, and usually on my end, when I hear a beep, a hand has come up, but I might not be able to see everybody. So
It's just Megan. Was gonna say thank you, Robin. And I was thinking of something like petitions or something, because a lot of times we get the postcards all together from one source, someone has gathered them, one person. And so, sorry. Maybe, that one person can get petitions on a list or something and just scan that page instead of, I don't know, just something to make it probably easier for you all as well as easier for me.
Yeah.
Saving, and
great
our
if
main
we
goal
all-
is just to get everyone's name and make sure we have it correct. And if they want that, us to respond, to them at the end, that we have their address correctly and that we understand where they stand, what their comments are, so we can make good decisions.
Well, hopefully us members of the public and you, our agency folk, can work together to make that happen in a positive way. I look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll go to the next hand I saw up, Mr. Eddie Rodriguez.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this meeting. And I'd just like to make 2 points. One to Mr. Hancock regarding the availability of personnel and timing for the permittees to respond. This is a 1,371 page permit. It covers tables, figures, drawings, abbreviations, regulatory requirements, summary of proposed changes, maps, photos, illustrations, demographic info, public participation, site-specific traffic patterns, waste analysis plans, audit surveillance programs, dispute resolution plans, contingency plans, personnel training programs, and groundwater detection monitoring plan, just to touch on a few of the topics covered in. So I'm really appreciative of the department and its diligence in addressing this. And I can see where it would have taken you the time that it did. And I just hope that you continue to give the permittees consideration in addressing changes, and especially when they come, because any change in one place can institute a different course of action in another. So all of that has to be taken into effect. And to Mrs. Reed, I'd like to thank you for speaking up for the non-English speakers. Although I have mastered the language, I am a Spanish speaker. But one point I would like to make is that it's not necessarily the lack of Spanish or DNA or anything else, as it is the cumbersome navigation of the NMED and WIPP sites. And they are very technical papers, which are very hard to work our way around and work through. So I'd also like to, as Mayor Pro Tem of Carlsbad, I'd like everyone to understand that we strongly support this measure. We strongly support passage of this plan. We are all in favor of it. We are the people that are closest to it, our family, friends, neighbors, the people we go to church with, all work here. So we are here to make sure that everything is safe. NMED is very diligent in monitoring and staying on top of everything that's going on. But given the fact that we have a 1,371 page document, I believe that I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And I think we're getting close to the end of this process. And I'm not sure where we stand on the level 2 aspect and the shielding, but I would like to see this process move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I think the next hand I saw was Mr. John Wilkes. Well, while he's unmuting, you're still muted, sir, but I would say, Ms. Robin, I'm not sure if you still have your hand up, and if you do, that's okay, you can leave it up, but if you can put it down. Okay, no, thank you. So go ahead, Mr. Wilkes. And you're still muted, I'm sorry. Maybe, there you go.
I'd like to comment on 2 issues. The first one, I would like to see the permit prioritize shipments to the WIPP from Los Alamos National Lab, or at least specify a parity with the Idaho National Lab and Los Alamos National Lab. As you well know, right now, Idaho, for whatever reason, whatever bad reason, is monopolizing. So the legacy waste remains at the Los Alamos site from the 1943 boot print. Funding for the cleanup at Los Al for this fiscal year starting is $286 million. I would imagine that would cause a flow to the WIPP. In addition, the WIPP is going to begin processing 2.5 million metric tons of surplus plutonium, which is intended to eventually, in some form, end up in the WIPP. And lastly, the Los Al lab is going to be producing 30 pits, plutonium pits, beginning in the year 2026. So there's plenty of volume of material that I believe should be in the WIPP expeditiously. And the Idaho lab announced this week that they just exhumed 50,000 drums of waste. I assume that was some kind of notice that they will intend to ship those to the WIPP. That's fine also, but I think we host the WIPP. It's a federal establishment, but we host it in this state, and we should at least be on a parity with Idaho. The second item I'd like to bring up is down blending. I'm relying on the Land Withdrawal Act, which specifically says in Section 12 that the Secretary shall not transport high-level radioactive waste or spent fuel. In my opinion, down-blended plutonium is not eligible, qualified for entry to the WIPP. And I'd like to see that specified in the permit so there be no doubt to anyone about that status. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkes. I'm catching up on notes, but thank you. And I guess I have to remind myself too, if I don't get to everything, I can go back and watch the video as well. So, but thank you. I believe the next hand I saw was Ms. Greenwald. Go ahead, Janet, you can mute yourself.
So I imagine that people from the southern part of the state wonder why we have so many people from the northern part of the state participating this time in the WIPP renewal process. Part of it the number of participants, I think, has to do with the surplus plutonium processing, which is scheduled to happen at Los Alamos. So I live directly downwind from Los Alamos and in a farming community. And I have to say that the people in my community that I've talked to have very little confidence that Los Alamos can start producing more plutonium pits, plus accomplish this mission of changing a metal pit into a powder safely, that they can do both of those things together safely. Even the National Academy of Sciences writers and associates to that group have questioned whether it's going to be a bottleneck. And I'll tell you, it certainly doesn't make me feel safe thinking about it, because Los Alamos does not have a great safety record. We all know that it was a drum from Los Alamos that exploded at WIPP. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Ms. Greenwald. I'm not sure whose hand I saw go up first, whether it was Mr. Heaton or the gentleman with a number and not a name. I'll go to Mr. Heaton, and then I'll go next to the gentleman who has his hand up as well. Go ahead, Mr. Heaton. And if you need help unmuting, I can help you, I believe.
Yeah, that's the trick. Thank you, Ricardo. This renewal is not the expansion of WIPP. Waste coming here will still have to meet the waste acceptance criteria and the WIPP Land Withdrawal Act true waste volume limits. The decision to include the Class 3 PMR for panels 11 and 12 into this renewal, from my perspective, was a good one, as it streamlines a process that takes a significant amount of resources on the part of NMED. To address the issue about waste coming from Los Alamos, I think that WIPP has tried in a very significant way to try to increase the number of shipments from Los Alamos, and has found it difficult to do for any number of reasons, primarily not being able to prepare the waste to be sent to WIPP. It's not that WIPP is not interested in taking those shipments. I think that we all would like to clean up New Mexico, and I think that there are some technical issues that have prevented that from happening. And as far as Ms. Greenwald's comment about the plutonium metal coming from Pantex and then going to Los Alamos, where it will be converted into an oxide and then subsequently shipped to Savannah River. That oxide preparation is not one that is horribly complicated and has been done many times before. So I'm not sure that that's really a legitimate concern about that waste then being converted into an oxide and then sent to Savannah River to be mixed with stardust to dilute it in a way that makes it unacceptable to extract the plutonium for a weapon. So that's basically what goes on. And so with that, thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments and being here, and especially the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hean. We'll go to the gentleman with 263 number, and then after that to Ms. Wheeler. So you can unmute yourself. I don't see your name, but it's yeah, the 26307511697.
I believe that's Jack Valpato.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Ricardo, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Really, what I wanted to talk about was the Class 2 shielding permit mod and the delaying of it. In WIPP's past, we have had issues with timing as far as getting remote handling waste into the panels so that we can adequately use the space in a efficient manner. And I feel that the delay of the Class 2 shielding permit mod would cause that same problem, and we would be back in 10 years asking to build an extra room or two because we couldn't get the shielded material into those rooms and put away accordingly like we need to. So that's just something to think about, is that a lot of what happens at WIPP is due to timing and the availability of the rooms and when the rooms are cut, when the rooms are ready to receive waste, and what kind of waste we put in there. It's important to consider that. I understand it does put an extra burden on you, and we do appreciate what you do. You do a fine job, and you've been very fair with us, and we're happy to engage you in those conversations. And anyway, we hope this goes on further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
Hello. I hope that we don't have to spend time with the semantics of whether or not this is an expanded mission. Because we've wasted a lot of time on that. And I think by almost any measure, we can call this an expanded mission, whether DOE and WIPP representatives do or not. I want to also address something that Mr. Heaton said. No one is concerned about the Aries oxidizing of the plutonium process. That is not what concerns people. What concerns people is the movement of this over 3,300 miles for every single shipment of this stuff, when it is a very dangerous form of plutonium should it ever be released. And over that incredibly long period of time and number of shipments, that's the concern. But what I wanted to address actually for myself was, I want to make sure that everything is addressed in this renewal permit so that there aren't any surprises, like the surprises that now have us calling this a WIPP expanded mission. So I know that there's, the waste stream that we've been working on with the legacy waste for 25 years. I know that there's now a new waste stream that is being proposed for the plutonium pit production, which will be huge. I just recently saw in the federal budget that there's also a potential waste stream for the versatile test reactor in Idaho. I don't want anything hidden here, and I'm asking that this renewal permit process make sure that all of these things are transparent, written into the documents, and not saved for a later day when the agencies can say, hey, we never said we weren't going to have X number of panels. I don't want to play with that anymore. So I'm requesting that these kinds of things be very clear and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. So I don't know, Mr. Volpato, if your hand is still up, and Janet, if your hand is still up, but I do see Kyle Marksteiner's hand is up. Go ahead, Kyle.
And Ricardo, I've got a brief statement from the Mayor of Carlsbad, Dale Janway. I work for the city of Carlsbad. The statement is following. Thank you to the New Mexico Environment Department for hosting the stakeholder meeting. The citizens of Carlsbad live near the waste isolation pilot plant and work at WIPP. We and our neighbors in southeast New Mexico are the essential stakeholders when it comes to what happens at WIPP. Carlsbad residents have a lengthy history of supporting the project, and we certainly support the documents presented in this renewal process. We appreciate the NMED's efforts with offering additional community outreach, and we also know that the permittees have done an excellent job with providing opportunities for public comments and participation. We know that the NMED and WIPP have been working on this permit for a significant amount of time, and we acknowledge the NMED's neutrality as an objective regulator. We also appreciate the decision to include the Class 3 permit modification in this project, which is a very logical step. The NMED has previously approved 2 additional panels, though at a different location. The proposed renewal only includes a few minor changes to WIPP and nothing which in any way creates a safety issue. Furthermore, the renewal does not change the WAC at WIPP, nor is an expansion of WIPP. We thank the NMED again for its objectivity and encourage prompt approval of this renewal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. I'll go check with Megan if there's anything in the chat. Do you see anything in the chat, Megan?
No, I don't.
Okay, and so just so everybody knows, right, you can also do that. I'll go to the next one. Miss Reed, I see your hand currently up. And if you've had your hand up and I just don't see it, I just might not see it. So I don't see any hands up at the moment except Miss Reed's. Go ahead, Miss Reed.
Well, I had some technical statements also. And this refers to the exposure pathway analysis in the application. And I would say that the exposure pathway analysis is inadequate. I have said this before because basically it hasn't really changed much. It assumes that the only pathways are VOCs, and that there's only an air pathway for effects on the public or the environment. But this is not correct, because VOCs are not the only hazardous materials at WIPP, and the only reason why this air pathway has been seen as the only pathway, and that they claim that in the analysis that there is no other pathway, there's no water pathway, anything like this, is because back in the very original day, EPA decided to remove the possibility of water being injected by the case that we had an example of a Bates well blowout, where water was injected under excessive pressure. It traveled for many miles, farther than the distance between the edge of the site and the waste panels, and blew out the Bates well. Yet this was never analyzed. It was considered, even though it had already happened, it was considered improbable. It has always been ignored. However, this is a very likely pathway, and I think this needs to be included. We also now have fracking, which creates earthquakes, and this has been happening in this area, certainly in the area nearby in Texas and the border area. And we also have the example of an explosion that caused a release of hazardous and radioactive materials into the air. This was an air release. If we had a larger explosion, which is not at all incredible, much more could be released and travel even farther. The last release went for many miles. There are these other pathways, and therefore this exposure pathway analysis is inadequate and needs to be revised. Now, there's also a combination of the exposure pathway analysis and the effect on the public. I feel that it's not that NMED needs to understand and inform the public of what the actual risks of their permitting actions are. So if you provide an operating permit that allows WIPP to operate, that creates a lot of things. Indirectly, it creates transportation and other things like that, so that you really need to understand what the true effects on the public and the environment are. You must understand what are the risks from both normal operations at the facility as well as accidents, and what are the risks of normal operations or normal transportation and accidents during transportation from the generator sites or back and forth to Savannah River, to Pantex, to Lano, of this very dangerous powdered waste, that must be included as well. Therefore, you are extending the number of people who are potentially affected, not only to people who live around the WIPP site itself, but people who live near any of the transportation routes throughout New Mexico, because this is the real life scenario. If that drum of waste had exploded during transportation instead of in the facility, it could have been an even nastier scenario. And you must also include the health and the stressors of the people that live both around the facility, who are stressed by many other facilities. Their health is highly affected by a very dirty environment down there. These are the kinds of things that need to be looked at. Only by understanding these things can you let the public know what their true risk is, and can you create adequate conditions in the permit to protect the public and the environment. Now, historically, NMED and the Hazardous Waste Bureau have seemed not to want to know what the effects of their permits are. This really needs to be stopped now. This is supposed to be a new era where we do things differently, and we do things correctly, and we do things in a non-discriminatory way. And to be able to understand whether this permit is going to cause discrimination, you need to know if there's going to be disparate effects from this permit. And, or you need to be able to understand what conditions need to be put into the permit to avoid having disparate effects on the minority people who are part of this minority majority state that we have here. Now, NMED does have the authority to require conditions in the permit to make sure that it's not discriminatory and that it's not going to excessively harm human health and the environment. And I feel that you must go beyond just the requirements of the exposure pathways. You must look at all the contaminants, including the radioactive contaminants, even if you're not allowed to regulate specifically those contaminants. You must go beyond that because you need to find out what is the real life cost and risk to the public, and what can you do, what can you put into the permit, what conditions to make sure that it is safe and that it is non-discriminatory. If you don't have the data and the information to know what really would happen under certain conditions, accident and normal conditions, you cannot know this information. You cannot create adequate conditions in the permit to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Yes, we're taking notes. Taking notes. Joni Aarons, sorry, I missed you, I think a couple of times. Go ahead, Miss Aarons.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you for this meeting. I have a couple of comments. I want to support Don Hancock's concern about the proposed Class 2 permit mod about the shielded containers. The permittees already have shielded containers that they can put on the floor in the rooms. We cannot delay the permit renewal process any further. We need to get this permit in place. And I appreciate CCNS appreciates your timeline that you proposed to get the permit hearing done by the end of this year with a decision by summer 2023. CCNS also supports a 30-day comment period for the TID. CCNS will be submitting some comments in the next week or so about the TID and some suggestions that need to be looked at, specifically under 40 CFR 270.10 and the omnibus provision at 270.32. And specifically, like Ms. Reed, requiring exposure studies, there needs to be a seismic study. There needs to be a floodplain study as climate change is changing the flooding situation in southeastern New Mexico. Further, all of the fracking around the WIPP site has increased earthquakes in that area substantially, as documented in recent news stories and scientific reports that we'll submit. During the last permit hearing on the shaft, the expansion shaft, DOE said that they would pay to translate documents. We believe that the Environment Department should take DOE up on this so that this 10-year renewal permit, where every single provision in the permit is available for public comment, is available for people to make comments. And I would request, as Mr. Hancock has, this whole process of looking at the 2020 application, looking at the 2022 application consolidated matrix, this is beyond the general public's ability to understand what's going on. I spent a lot of time last weekend trying to figure out what was going on. And for somebody who's been working on WIPP for over almost 35 years now, it was not good. It was frustrating. I felt like if anybody was purposely trying to create a process
The clippers.
to prevent people or discourage people from participating, it was pretty much, they did a good job. How's that? So I would ask that the permittees put together one permit renewal application before the meeting next Thursday night. They have the resources to do that. I'm sure in some form it's already been done. But this is not a good way to start off a permit renewal. And then I just have one technical issue. So the permittees are saying that in the waste handling building, that the aisles next to the building walls need to be shorter or smaller, like 41 inches. And I just want to remind the permittees and some of the people on the call that were part of the negotiations back in 2010, that the reason that the distance between the metal walls of the waste handling building and where the waste is stored is because there was an incident back in that time frame where the forklift tines pushed on the metal walls. So in a way to prevent the tines from going through the metal walls with a load of waste. We made the aisles big enough so that around the perimeter, so that that would not occur. So I would ask the permittees, an accident would not occur, opening up a pathway for a release. I would ask the permittees to please withdraw that proposed change at this point in time. Those are my comments right now. And as I said, I'll get comments on the TID before you CCNS's concerns about the permit applications to the Environment Department so that you can hopefully include some of them or all of them in the TID. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. So yeah, I'm glad you went back to that comment. I just wanted to make it clear for everybody, right, in this meeting. Right, so NMED is not formally requesting or seeking public comment, as part of the process. But obviously, as you, Joni, and many others know, and if you don't know, the public, members of the public, anyone can submit comments to NMED at any time, right? That's your right, and you can do so. But just so everybody understands, yes, we're not formally requesting comments, but you're more than, that's your right to provide your comments. I will say, if you intend to do so, yes, I would try and get them in, right, in the next week and a half, because, we're on this tight schedule, and we would like to, again, issue our TID in the first half of May. So if you want to submit, again, just do so, and I would say in the next week and a half. So anyway, thank you. I realize I have two sets of screens, or two screens of people here. So I know I see Ms. Robbins' hand. Is there anybody else who has their hand up that has not yet had a chance to participate or to provide their comments or feedback? Okay. And with that, go ahead, Ms. Seidel.
Thanks, Mr. Maestas. Again, I really appreciate all of this, and I really appreciate the citizen scientists who are able to articulate some of the technical aspects that those of us who are lay people, business people, and concerned on a different level cannot really articulate. It comes to my mind that I want to say, please, NMED, no more previous permit modifications. Just deny them all, and let's just get to this renewal and put everything in that renewal. And I think that's been said, but I just wanted to reiterate that. I wanted to thank folks, because my concern is also the transport of all these materials. And finally, WIPP was originally talked about to all of us New Mexicans as a site for legacy waste. And I would request that in the permit that no proposed new waste from pit production, from the proposed pit production, be allowed to WIPP, and that we were told years ago that WIPP was a pilot project, just to see what works, right? And it wasn't going to become the sole repository for everything, all weapons waste, all military waste, old, legacy, and new. And so I don't know if you can get it in the permit renewal that the Department of Energy, as an agency of the federal government, must meet its original promise that there would be other repositories, that New Mexico would not bear the sole burden of all the nation's weapons waste. Because as it seems right now, when I read different things that are coming out about this, there is no plan for other repositories, and it's all coming to WIPP, past, present, and possibly future with this pit production from Los Alamos and other places. So I would request that that somehow be part of what NMED requires to protect our state and our people and our lands. Otherwise, we will be the only place that all of this waste comes to, and that's just not right. So please help with that. Thanks. Sorry if I'm monopolizing. I don't mean to run my mouth too much, but I guess I do. So
No,
thank you.
you're fine. No, you're fine. Thank you. You're fine. Thank you. Any chats since we have a moment with no hands? No chats. Okay. Megan, do you have anything? I mean, well, people raise their hand. You know, we still have time, everybody, just so you know. This is very informative. So we appreciate everybody's time. But Megan, is there anything while we're
I was
waiting
just
for
gonna
hands?
say, before we close out, because we can see better, I think maybe if you turn off the sharing, because maybe we can see more people all together.
Sure. And so yeah, if you know, and yeah, good point. I had that slide up to kind of help with the points for the topics, but maybe if you guys want to take a picture of it and I can stop sharing, but you can see, you know, what items are up there. But sure, and I guess I'm a little, as host, right? I do have a broader grid from everybody, so I understand that not everybody has the same viewpoint as I do. So I'll stop sharing. Let me see. I guess it's here.
Guess while you're doing that, I'd just say in response to you, Joni, that it's confusing, and I think Deborah too. We're definitely, you know, we're trying to make it less confusing because, as you know, when we issue the draft permit, we have to base it on the most current permit. So that was, you know, when they incorporated these class 3 changes that have to do with expansion, right? So we can talk about that at renewal. When we talk about other issues with expansion, it seems appropriate. That was another reason we consolidated it. But when we talk there, then we just want to make sure that we're able to discuss everything in one venue, and that's one of the main reasons that we did that.
Well, I appreciate that, Megan. I think it was 2 summers ago that there were permit mods and that there was, what was it? The volume of record
And panel closure, I think. Yeah.
and
And
then,
that's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. And so let me just reiterate, and I just went forward to answer your question. That was very confusing as well. So again, I say just deny the class 2 as soon as you get it, because that doesn't make it. It's very confusing. It's not good optics for the department. The department's mission is to protect public health and safety, and confusing the public with these overlapping permit mods and renewals doesn't reflect well on the department. So I guess I'm talking to Mr. Sheen. Just deny it because it's just ugly. It's distracting. It doesn't support good public participation. And other people can add more concerns about this. It just the class 2 just needs to be denied, or the permittees just need to decide not to submit it at all at this point in time and wait, as Ricardo said, until after the renewal is over. I mean, we've been waiting 2 years for this process, basically. And we need to be able to look at the full permit. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Joni. Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Wilkes. And you're muted still.
I'm going to ask you to just clarify something for me. I realize the WIPP is a federal facility and the DOE basically is the senior agency involved in it. They have contractors, and we regulate. The state of New Mexico, of course, has a regulatory function over some aspects. I assume that the date of the data of the active period when the cessation of accepting shipments is not in the permit. I'm just wondering, just because DOE wants to keep the WIPP open indefinitely, is it the policy, is it the statement of the state of New Mexico to keep issuing permits indefinitely, or do we have some kind of thought about when the last 10-year permit might be issued?
It's a good question, and let me see how I can answer that. I can say, you know, it's not the policy of the state to continue to issue permits to WIPP indefinitely, right? They do have to go through the renewal application process under the RCRA regulations, and you know, I mean, I guess it depends. I don't want to get too political, but it all depends on, you know, the administration and the senior management of the chain and how they want to go through that process, right? And then the level of participation from the public, concerns. So it's pretty involved, but they do have to go through the regulatory requirements and go through that process, right? I don't know if I can answer it beyond that. So obviously, this renewal is important to many groups, many stakeholders, many individuals. It's important to the permittees. It's important to the state of New Mexico, and you know, I'm sure if you've seen the media reports, you know, it's important to this governor. So we're definitely wanting to make sure that this renewal process is comprehensive, is robust, and that's what we're working towards. And I guess that's how I will address that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hancock, I saw your hand go up next.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things which have probably been said pretty well already, but just to kind of make the point. I requested a month ago of the permittees that they put the current version of the permit in one place so it would be easier for people to deal with. My understanding at the time, and it could be my misunderstanding, and Rick Chavez can correct me if I get it wrong, but my impression was they were figuring out a way to do that. But as far as I know, it still hasn't happened. So Joni has already requested something like that happen before next week. So it's fine to say in your March 17th cover letter that you're changing the following attachments from your March 2020 application, and you're not changing anything in enumerated other number of attachments. But that can be all put in one place so that people don't have to look at the 1,300 pages of March to figure out which attachments to pay attention to and which they don't need to pay attention to because they've now been superseded by attachments that were submitted on March 17th, 2022. That's an easy thing to do. So I just want to say that. I guess I also want to be clear, and it sounds like there is understanding of it. The issue of not only has the public been told, but the state has been told in permit applications going back to the 1990s and in the renewal application in 2009 that disposal operations for WIPP were for 25 years. And that is reflected numerous places in the permit. In the permit renewal application, the permittees want to delete all of those timeframes. But that's if somebody thinks that's not going to be an issue in this renewal process, I wanted to disabuse them of that and to make clear that people understand that WIPP expansion takes many forms. It takes the form of new panels beyond the 10 that were ever supposed to be. It takes the form of the facility operating longer. It takes the form of more waste that was never considered. Just to make the point, there was no surplus plutonium declared by the United States in 1992 when the WIPP Land Withdrawal Act was passed. So to say that Congress expected that to go to WIPP is not a credible statement. Doesn't mean Congress can't change laws. I fully understand they can, but they haven't. And so I think there needs to be a clear understanding that these are going to be significant issues in the process, as is, by the way, let me just mention one other thing. All of the focus on shielded containers would mean that the hot cell isn't necessary. So maybe the hot cell should just be decommissioned and eliminated. That would save some considerable space in the permit as well as operational requirements at WIPP.
Thank you, Don. Ms. Greenwald. And you're still muted. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to say, partly in support of what Mr. Wilkes said, that if the promises to New Mexico are going to be kept, and we are not going to have WIPP forever, someone is going to have to say no. I'm not sure who. But I think that the New Mexico Environment Department would have to be part of that, and the Hazardous Waste Bureau. And the other thing is that I've forgotten who, someone said there is no expansion of WIPP. And Don has made points along this line. I want to make one more. And that is, in her letter to DOE, our governor mentioned that WIPP is expanding. And I'd like to just say that it's draconian to keep saying there is no expansion. When I was in the hearings and the hearing officer would not let the public use the word expansion, I felt that I was in Russia or China, not in the United States. And I'm just hoping that we don't have to deal with. I hope that expansion is now, the word is out of the box, and we don't have to deal with someone saying, can't use that word, as if we were kindergartners, you know? So that's it.
Thank you. Going through my screens here. Is there anybody else? Is there any chats? Let me look at the chat now that I don't see any chats. Any other? Let me see, Ms. Wheeler, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. You know, WIPP was sold to New Mexico under certain misrepresentations that the waste was not that harmful. Now the term transuranic waste, nobody even knows what it means because they think it means contaminated items, and it doesn't mean that at all. And also the idea that it would only take, you know, a certain kind of waste and only for so long. And we aren't children. I mean, we knew at the time that these things were going to change, that was just a way of getting New Mexico to accept something that it really didn't want. But now to have us having to play that out is really it's not right in our society and in our country. We want the best to be done by our agencies and not the worst, which is what we're seeing played out right now with WIPP policies.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. I guess, thank you. And I just want to add, because it came to my mind, right? Obviously, we have, over 30 participants, and, there are a lot of members of the permittees on the meeting. But, I did request that they participate as observers, and I appreciate you doing so. The permittees will have their own meeting next week, and which will be very specific, right? It's very specific to the matrix and their updated application. So I just want to acknowledge that there are many from the permittees on, but they are observing, and I appreciate that. And we've heard many ideas, many concerns, both technical and broader, right? So we do appreciate that. This was kind of the intent for this virtual meeting. And so before I run out of time, I just wanted to state that I appreciate everybody's time. And, as we go along this process, if at any point we're able to share more information, we'll do so in some fashion. But we've gathered a lot of notes, a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. We'll definitely be looking at them over the next few days as we continue in our process. Megan or David or Rick, maybe now's good. Any other comments from the NMED staff?
Thanks for everyone's participation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would there be any, what's the term? Any objections to us ending 15 minutes early? I have 7:13 on my clock. We did. So I guess maybe last call. How about that? As a last call for any final thoughts, observations, concerns. And I hope, if you don't mind though, if you want to go the full, by all means, we've made our schedules till 7:30, and I do not want to take any of that time away. But it does feel like there's it's kind of slowed down a little bit. So if there's no objections, maybe a last call. Sure.
There's a question in, oh no, I thought there was one in the chat. Oh no, never mind.
So thank you. So anyone else? Rick, I thought you were going to say something. Sorry, I kind of
No, no, it's just gonna be a joke of you can only charge to the quarter hour if for your time. And now.
So Ricardo,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wilks, you started, but then you muted yourself. Okay, go ahead.
okay, could you please explain how we are going to be notified or given the link for the Thursday meeting? I assume at that meeting, we'll switch sides in the sense that we will be observers, and the permittees will have the floor. But we'd still like to attend that meeting as observers. How will we get the link or be notified?
That's a good question. And, you know, I know they have their process, and they're you know, they're a smart bunch of folks. So permittees, there's a note, right? Make sure Mr. Wilks gets the link. I know they have their process. I'm afraid to open it up because I don't want them, you know, then to start fielding questions, and you know that's not the purpose. So we'll make sure, Mr. Wilks, you'll get that notice, and permittees, please make note that I'm pretty sure maybe the people that participated here, and if you need that information, you know, I'll give that to you. So we'll make sure. I'll make sure that you get that link. I'll help the permittees get that out to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But you're correct. It will be their meeting, and we'll probably be there as observers too. So we'll observe in some fashion. But that was a good question. Let me see. And I thought I had something else in mind, but no, yeah, they have their methods of reaching out. Okay. And
Joni's asking if they'll post on their website. I mean, we don't know. We assume, but we don't know. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
we'll make sure. I mean, we'll make sure you get it, right? Like I said, I'm leery to have them respond in this meeting just because I just don't want to open that. I'm kind of keeping them in the corner. But we'll make sure that they get that link out to you. But in the meantime, okay, so here I go. The question that did come to my mind is, you know, how are we going to notify you guys when, you know, when this meeting has been posted on the NMED YouTube page, right? Because we have to work with our, you know, what is it, information office, and to do that. So I'm not sure, but we'll make sure to let you guys know as well. Maybe I'll do the same, you know, maybe I'll reach out to Mr. Mark Steiner and Mr. Hancock to say, it's up now, you know, please let the folks that you've helped us communicate with, let them know. Otherwise you can check occasionally, or we'll kind of make it easy or state something on our WIPP news page on the NMED website. We'll do something to make sure you guys are aware that this meeting has been posted. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it was nice to see everybody. Be safe. You know, the fires, there's many fires around. So thoughts and prayers go out to everybody, including those fighting fires. And stay safe, everyone. And until we see each other again. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do I get out of here?